Okay, getting to today's notes, we're going to look at adding and subtracting rationals, which looks a lot like this right here. It's going to include a lot of factoring on this. So if you're not comfortable with factoring, you will need to come in and get some help. So, starting on this first one, I'm going to take the numerator and denominator of both fractions and I'm going to factor every little piece that I can. Okay, I want everything to look like this, or it multiplied by another factor. Okay, so this very first one. What factors of negative 4 add up to negative 3? What factors of negative 4 add up to negative 3? Negative 4 and positive 1. Okay. After that, next I've got x squared minus 16. That is an example of what, not cubic, but it's the difference of squares. What's the square root of x squared? X. What's the square root of 16? So what are my two factors? X plus 4, x minus 4. Okay. I go to the second fraction, the numerator of the second fraction, x minus 5. Can I factor that? No. How can I quickly tell that I can't factor it? There's no exponent. I don't have x squared or x cubed or anything like that. Okay, so a lot of times it'll already be, or you can't factor it down anymore. The second one, there's a lot less factoring in this one than there is this one. Okay. So then looking at the denominator of that fraction, what factors of 4 add up to 5? 4 and 1. Okay. Once you are done with that, and we will go ahead and do this part of it, we're actually going to jump down here and we're going to identify the excluded values. I'll get all the way to the end and I'll explain that, but right now I'm just going to explain what excluded values are, and that really probably won't make sense until we get into graphing it. Right now I just need you to know how to be able to find the excluded values. Whenever we get into the graphs, we really see what those things are. So all you do to find your excluded values is once you've factored all the denominators, you set each factor equal to 0 and solve, just like we've done thousands of times. So x plus 4 would give me what? Negative 4. X minus 4 would give me positive 4. X plus 1 would give me negative 1. And I already have negative 4 down there. Okay? Mathematically, what those excluded values mean, and again, whenever we get to the graph, you'll see what it means there, but that's a few lessons down the line. All that means is if I plug in negative 4 into this, negative 4 plus 4 is going to give me 0. 0 times it doesn't matter is going to give me 0. And I can't divide by 0. It gives me an error. So those excluded values are the values of x that would make this equal 0, or make this to where you would try to divide by 0, which you can't do. Okay, that's excluded values are. You do need to know how to identify those. Alright, so now jumping back up to the top and actually going through this and through the steps. So it says divide out common factors. All that means is you look to see if you can cancel something. You can only do this, you have to do it within each fraction. Okay? I can't cancel out this x plus 1 with this x plus 1. So, but on this first one I've got an x minus 4 in the numerator and an x minus 4 in the denominator. So those two will cancel. In the second one I've got x minus 5 x plus 1, x plus 4. Okay, so I don't have x minus 5 in the denominator, so nothing cancels. So now the second, let's go ahead and write that out on the side, put cancel out factors, because I think most people, whenever you read your notes, you'll probably know what that means more so than divide out common factors. So that is the first step, factor and cancel out. Okay. The second step, you're going to want to identify the common denominator. This is one that once you get your mind wrapped around how to find it, I think it's pretty easy. Some people struggle doing that though. I don't think it's too difficult. All you do is you look at it all the way across the whole problem in the denominator, the factors that are left, and really for your common denominator, all you're going to do is you're just going to list them. But do not repeat. If any of them repeat, do not repeat them. So I've got x plus 4, I've got x plus 1, and then I already got x plus 4 in there. So that's going to be my common denominator. Now once I have that, I need to apply it. So we'll come back up here, we'll rewrite this without my factors that I canceled out. So I've got x plus 1 over x plus 4 plus x minus 5 over x plus 1, x plus 4. So now that I have that written down, I want to compare each denominator separately to my common denominator and apply whatever it is I'm missing. Okay, so on my first fraction, I've got x plus 4. What am I missing from the common denominator in that one? X plus 1. Okay. I've got the x plus 4 part. I need x plus 1. So whenever we're doing the warm-up, and it was the first example where we had to find the common denominator of 6. Okay, and that first fraction, it had 2 down there. We multiplied it by 3 over 3, right? Okay, so here, I need to multiply both the numerator and denominator by whatever is missing. Okay. On my second fraction, is that denominator missing anything? No. So I don't have to do anything to it. It's already got the common denominator. So now that I have that, I can add the numerators, just like we did in the regular problems. But once your denominator is the same, you will not add it. Okay, so my denominator will stay the same. I've got x plus 1 times x minus 4. Sorry, x plus 4. And then on the top, which will be a pretty long numerator, I'm going to have x plus 1 times x plus 1 plus, okay, do not forget that, x minus 5. Okay, so once I'm here, now I'm going to simplify the numerator because it looks pretty. I'm just going to do whatever this tells me to do. So right here, you know, kind of follow your PEMDAS. I've got multiplication here between these two factors before I have to add. So I'm going to leave this down here. And I'm going to do FOIL with x plus 1 and x plus 1. Okay, so that would give me x times x gives me x squared. X times 1 is x. 1 times x is x. And x plus x is 2x. 1 times 1 is 1. And then let's look at this plus x minus 5. Is this positive or this plus? Is it affecting anything in this set of parentheses? Yes or no? No. If it was minus, it would. It would turn into minus x plus 5. If it's positive, it does not change. Okay, so I really don't need my parentheses there. Okay, so once I'm here, I'm simplifying the numerator. So I multiply when I need to multiply. Again, the plus didn't affect the x minus 5 factor. Once I have, if I have to multiply something, once I'm done with that, I'll then need to combine my like terms. So I've got x squared two x plus x is 3x. And then 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Okay. So now it's kind of, once you get here, once you've combined them and you've made one big term, you kind of do this first step with your new term, really. It's the exact same idea as up above. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor my numerator. So what factors of negative 4 add up to positive 3? Do what?
Plus 4 and minus 1.
Plus 4 and minus 1. Okay, my denominator is the same. X plus 4, x plus 1. And up top, I've got x plus 4, x minus 1. And again, it says to divide out common factors. You're going to hear me say cancel. I think we're all more familiar with that, using that terminology than divide out. Does anything cancel out on that? Spencer? The x plus 4s? Okay. So x plus 4s cancel out. My answer is what is left. And then you have to include those excluded values with your answer. That's what it's gonna. Whenever you're not asked for excluded values, include the excluded values. Okay, it's part of the answer. So whenever you see answer, put this. And if there's not a spot for it right next to it, I would just put excluded values. X does not equal, and list them out. Obviously, learning it for the first time, we have the little spot for it down there. So let's go to the next problem. And again, like I said, whenever we started the first one, this one right here, hopefully you can already tell that the factoring, the first step, isn't going to be very hard, because what's the only part of this problem that I can factor? The denominator of the second one, the one that has x squared. So my very first fraction, it's going to stay the same. This one's going to be subtraction over. Now, how can I cancel, or how can I factor that? Do what? What'd you say, Eden? Not on that one. What's always the very first thing we do? if we have an A and a B term. Pull out the... Did you say Matthew? You say it, Matthew? Or is it someone else over here? Okay, Samuel, did you say it? No, the exponent even said it though. Pull greatest common factor. So I pull out x, and then I got x minus 1. Okay, and then it says to cancel out the common factors. Do I have a common factor in the first fraction? No. Do I have a common factor in the second fraction? What is it? X. Okay, so now whenever I rewrite this, and let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and rewrite it on this line. So I want to make sure that we're all clear what happens whenever you cancel everything out. What am I going to put up there in the numerator of the second fraction now? 1. Do not put 0. Okay? That's a very common mistake on these problems. So now going to the common denominator. Journey, what is my common denominator going to be on this one? Awesome. So there's that, and then we will apply the common denominator to that. Roslyn, what part of the first fraction, its denominator, is missing what part of the common denominator?
X minus 1.
X minus 1. So I need to multiply that first fraction by x minus 1 over x minus 1. Okay. Cam, the second fraction, is missing what part of the common denominator?
X plus 1.
X plus 1. Okay. So now once I'm there, I'm going to subtract the numerators and simplify it. Okay. Again, your denominators are going to stay the same. So I'm just combining it into one big fraction now. Okay, I've got the first fraction, which gave me x minus 1 times 5. Okay, know that that's the same as if that 5 was in the front. All we're going to do with that is we're just going to distribute that 5 in there. After that, I've got minus 1 times x plus 1. Okay, so this one looks a little weird because of that 5. Okay, it looks pretty obvious that negative 1 we're going to have to distribute in there, but the 5 is where it's at. It's the same as if it was in the front. Okay, so I'm going to take the 5 and I'll distribute to get 5x minus 5. We'll write the denominator out at the end. And I'll distribute that negative 1, which is going to give me negative x minus 1. Okay. And then the very last thing, we'll go ahead and just write it down on the bottom step, or the next line. is just combining those like terms. So if I have 5x minus x, that gives me 4x. And then I have negative 5 minus 1, which gives me negative 6, over x plus 1, x minus 1. So after that, I'll need to simplify or factor the numerator. Can I factor that at all? And this is one of those tricky ones because, yeah, it doesn't have x squared, but does it have a greatest common factor? Does 4 and 6 have a common factor? What is it? 2. So I've got 2 times 2x plus 3 over x plus 1 times x minus 1. Sorry, not plus 3, minus 3. And we really could have just written that on the next step, because that's the factoring step. Okay, so can I cancel out any common factors on this? Yes or no? Jacob? What's your vote? No. Okay. Roslyn, what's your vote? Jade? EJ? No. You saying that 'cause everybody else said no? No. Oh, okay. So, you got 2x plus 3, or 2x minus 3 up top. There is no 2x minus 3 in the bottom. So nothing cancels out. So that is your answer. And then we did not do the excluded values after that factoring step up top, so we'll need to do it now. Okay, so the spot where we will need to look at is that big red box right there. Okay, so, and there's one on here you have to make sure that you get. That is going to give me what excluded value? Negative 1. That is going to give me what excluded value? 1. What other excluded value do I need to include? 0. Because if you set, and we canceled it out, and this is why we should have done it before we did the canceling out. That x right there, okay, you set that equal to 0. Well, there's nothing else to do. So one of those excluded values has to be 0. Okay. The most common mistake on all of these problems are the people who forget that it's subtraction and you have to distribute that to all of that. Okay, the most common thing I'll see is people forget to do that and they'll give me negative x plus 1 instead of minus 1. They won't distribute that there. So that's just, it's probably the one mistake I see the most on these. Okay, so go ahead and flip it over. Okay, so let's go through this. Let's go through one more, and I'll let you do the last one on your own, unless it comes out weird, which I don't think it does. So first thing I need to do is to factor. So the factors of negative 15 that add up to 2, what would that be? Negative 3 and 5. What's the square root of 25? 5. So I've got x plus 5, x minus 5 on the bottom. We're adding here. Does the numerator of the second fraction, does it have a greatest common factor? What is it? Do what? The numerator. 4. Then the greatest common factor for the denominator would be x. Okay. Alright, so that we don't run into this again, let's go ahead and go down here and identify the excluded values. Okay, so Callie, what would those be? Give me 2 of the excluded values. -5 and +5. Okay, so give me the other 2. So what excluded values would that denominator give me? Set it equal to 0 and solve it. -3 and 0. Alright, so now let's go back up and cancel stuff out. Jade, can I cancel anything out on the first fraction?
Yeah, you can do that
X plus 5. Make sure you always look to cancel stuff out. This is what, if there's something that is easy on these kind of problems, this is what makes it easy, is being able to get rid of stuff. Okay, see anything on the second fraction? X plus 3. Okay. Spencer, what would my common denominator be?
X minus 5, x plus 5.
We canceled out the x plus 5.
X minus 5 into x.
X times x minus 5. So that's what we want to get it to. So I'm going to rewrite what I have left after I've canceled everything. And then now I just want to apply the common denominator to it. So, Jacob, the first fraction, its denominator is missing what part of the common denominator?
X plus 5.
X plus 5 isn't part of the common denominator.
Oh, it's missing x.
It's just missing x. So I'm going to multiply the first fraction by just x over x. Jeremy, the second fraction is missing what part of the common denominator?
X minus 5.
X minus 5. Once I have found the common denominator, I can combine them into one big fraction where that denominator will stay the same. So I have x times x minus 3 plus, do not forget the operation in between the fractions, 4 times x minus 5. And then we'll just need to go through and simplify that. Okay, so I will distribute the x into x minus 3. So I have x squared minus 3x. I'll then distribute the 4 to get 4x minus 20. And that is all over my greatest common factor. Once we have that multiplied, once we've got those distributed, I then need to combine my like terms. So those two x terms, negative 3x plus 4x, would just give me x. And so that would be the simplified form, but then I will need to factor that numerator if possible. So can somebody tell me what the factors are of negative 20 that add up to positive 1? Positive 5 and negative 4. Okay. Can anything cancel in that fraction? Bill? No. Make sure that you do not cancel an x plus 5 and an x minus 5. They are not the same. Just because they both have x's and they both have 5's, that they're not the same. So I can't cancel anything out. It's as factored down as possible. So that right there is my answer with my excluded values. Okay. Questions on that problem? Fabulous. So next, what I want you to do is you're going to attempt this one right here. Okay, I will give you a little hint here. Once you get down, once you've combined it and you have that new numerator and you're trying to factor it, you'll have a trinomial, something with x squared in it that you cannot factor. So if you get to that point and you can't factor that, that's a good hint that you probably got it right. Okay. So I want you, the person or people you're sitting around, I want you to see if you can work through that. I will slowly be putting the steps up here on the board. Okay, so here is the first couple steps. I'll have it factored out, and then also identify the common denominator here. Please feel free to stop me and tell me that I did something wrong if you catch it. I'll also go ahead, do the excluded values at the beginning, please. Don't forget to do those. Make sure that you're trying to apply this common denominator to the problem. So I need to apply the common denominator. The second fraction is fine. The first fraction would need to be multiplied by x plus 1 over x plus 1. Okay, so on that numerator, you would need to do FOIL with the x plus 1s. And then up here in green, this is the most common mistake I see. People do not distribute that negative to both those terms, which would give you minus x plus 5. And then whenever you combine like terms, you should get x squared plus x plus 6 . And like I was telling you, there are no, that is the numerator that you cannot factor. So that would be your final answer on that. Okay.